Next up, we have a special presentation from Loop by Jasmin Druffner.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmin. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is this working for everybody?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that confirmation. So hi, my name is Jasmin Druffner. I work at Loop. I'll explain what Loop is and go a little bit into my role as well. I worked specifically on the design team. My official role title is industrial designer and also durable packaging developer. And what that means is I am a bridge between brand partners such as P&G, as you can see here on the slide, Tide, Kraft Heinz, Unilever, Coca-Cola, Nestle, etc. And helping them understand what our parameters are in regards to reusable packaging and what that means, specifically in durability and also cleanability, and help them get onto the Loop platform. So I think we'll get a better understanding on that, during my presentation. Really welcome any questions, any follow-up emails that you might have. Really excited to be here today, and hopefully this can be an informative presentation to you on what's going on the world of reuse, specifically on artwork and also, just printing techniques, etc. I'll try to dive in more into that within my presentation. So just as a brief, start on who we are, Loop was founded by TerraCycle. TerraCycle is a company that has been around for 17 years this year. And TerraCycle is essentially a waste management company, right? So they really focus on, creating waste streams and essentially finding out how to recycle really hard to recycle materials. A couple of, funny examples are chewing gum or used diapers, condoms, so all sorts of materials from all different types of waste streams. That's what really TerraCycle is, honing in on, and how to recycle those materials and what to do with those materials later on, right? So we came from that company, and they, created Loop, and Loop is a reuse platform. So the idea of Loop is that essentially you're going to be consuming your regular, P&G, Nestle, Unilever products, but instead in a single use format, they're going to be in a reusable packaging. So Loop was introduced first in January 2019 at Davos. And since then, we have been launching very aggressively globally. TerraCycle is also a global company that we're in, 5 different continents. So it's really a massive undertaking. And same goes for Loop. Since 2019, we have launched first in New York City, and now we're operating in all of the lower 50 states for the US. We have recently launched in Canada. We're live in France and also in England, so also starting to grow in Europe and in the UK. Next, we're going to be launching in Japan, and we're also going to be launching in Australia. So what's interesting here is that we first launched as an e-com platform, and since last year, we're also now live with retailers. Specifically, right now we're live with Carrefour in France. So that's really where we want to grow. We don't want to just be an e-commerce platform. We really want to be working with really big retailers, and in that way, scale up in quantities, but also in accessibility to consumers. Right? We want this to be a global effort, and we want it to be accessible to as many people as possible. So, as an example for that, we're partnering up with Kroger and Walgreens in the US. We're partnering up with Loblaw in Canada, Tesco in the UK, as I mentioned, Carrefour in France, and Aeon in Japan, and Woolworths in Australia. So that's where we are today. So what I wanted to dive in a little bit more is this idea of reusable packaging. What's really changed in this type of platform is that now this packaging is becoming an asset, right, to the brand. And what's interesting here is that this is really an old idea. It's just updated, here as you can see on the slide, we're obviously making a mention of the milkman model, right, which is where this idea came from, where, the dairy industry would own the glass packaging and the consumer will only pay for the product, right, the milk inside of that container and the delivery. So we're trying to replicate that, but really scaling that up, in a global sense, and then also with these major CPG brands that I just mentioned. So that's major, right? So what I always like to mention here is that something that consumers don't really realize is that when you're buying into single use systems, you're actually buying the packaging as well. So let's say that you're going to a coffee shop and you're purchasing a coffee, and not only are you paying for the paper packaging, but also you're paying for the coffee, right? So that's the big switch here, is that you don't want to own that paper cup, right? As soon as you're done with it, you're going to be throwing that into hopefully a recycling bin. But that's the big switch here, is that you're not only paying for the product, you're also paying for that single use container that nobody really wants to own, and there's no value for it for the consumer. So the switch here is that the brands own the packaging, and they really invest more into that packaging so that it can be reused several times, and in that way that that cost for that packaging can be amortized over time. So, the idea with Loop is, basically we're trying to, move away from single use. I say a lot of times also that we're material agnostic. We're not trying to fight plastic per se. What we're trying to really fight against is single use, right? So our belief is that the issue is not with the material, but really with the consumption model. So we believe that in order to tackle, sustainability and just the tremendous amount of waste that we're inputting into the environment every day, one of those solutions should be reusability within CPGs. So as I mentioned, there's no value for the consumer in those, really cheap single-use containers, right? And that's something that we have seen like over the years. First it was glass, then aluminum, PET, cartons, and now you even have aluminized plastics, which are just like even harder to as we progress here. These materials are even harder to recycle, right? And the consumer delight is just like going with that same rate, right? So, right, if that this whole idea of like investing into a packaging, it's really where this comes in, right? We're trying to join the feasibility of single use and being available, in many different markets, but we really want to bring back the consumer experience with that packaging and bring that through the innovation of reusable packaging. Right. So basically the goal of Loop is how do we solve for these unintended consequences of disposability while maintaining its virtue. So the virtue of single use is that it's very accessible, right? It's something that you don't have to care about, so we're trying to mimic in the same way, you're going to that coffee shop, you get your coffee, but instead of putting that, paper cup into a recycling bin, you would put that maybe stainless steel or polypropylene cup into a reuse bin, right? So where we would take that in and we would clean it and then bring it back to the retailer or whoever is the brand partner to either refill or reuse those containers. So this is exactly what I mean. So for example, right now, and these prices are obviously very, just for illustrative purposes. You could say that, in the current industry, you're maybe paying like, 10 cents per packaging, and that's how much you pay per use. But then when you're looking at reuse, you're probably investing way more into that container, which is, an example here, $3. But the cost of cleaning and, the amount of times that you can reuse that's going to bring down that cost per use, so that's kind of like the financial logistic behind it. So all that being said, a really big part of Loop is also that there is a deposit associated with that container, right? So from a consumer standpoint, you would walk into Carrefour today and you could pick up, one of those reusable containers brands, and you would be checking out. You would be paying for, in this case, the deodorant, and you would be paying a deposit on that container, right? So as soon as you return that container, you get the deposit back. So that's how it also works between the consumer and the brand. So that being said, I just wanted to show you, what our key design principles are. Within reusability is really important to consider the durability and the cleanability, as well as the life cycle analysis of those containers, right? So this is something that we tackle every day with brands that we are bringing onto the platform. The idea here is that you need a container to be durable enough to sustain the platform, and you need a container to be very feasibly cleanable. And we're really focusing on materials that have a really good LCA analysis, meaning that, one, they're really easily recyclable. In the case of stainless steel and glass, they're even recyclable into themselves. So you could actually have, at the end of the life cycle of that specific packaging, you could break it down and create the same container over and over again. So that's really great from an LCA perspective, which is also a really big consideration for us. So, just take into consideration like premiumization, but also innovation for these containers. A good case here is actually the container from Häagen-Dazs. So they're on the right bottom of the slide. You can see their container. It's all stainless steel. It's all one material. They did a really good job at also doing a permanent printing on the container. So, without getting too much into the design of the packaging, I wanted to talk more about the artwork. So as you can see there, the lid is actually the only denominator of the SKU, right? So meaning that the body of the container is always static and is used for all the different flavors that they have, but it's actually the lid that is denominating what SKU is in that container, right? So what that means, and it's just interesting to think about that because of that modularity, you can actually fluctuate your inventory. Say you can come up with a new flavor or something that's a little bit more seasonal, all because it's the lid that's denominating and not just the container. So what's also really cool is that they approached a permanent printing technique. I believe that this is a digital printing, at least for the body, perhaps pad printing for the lid. They did a ceramic coating on top of that to preserve, that permanent printing. And this is something that resists our cleaning system and has, been a really good packaging for cleaning, for drying, for refilling. So it kind of really touches on all those points. Another really interesting aspect to think about on packaging and also on the artwork side of things is that the reality is that containers are going to be aging in this platform. As you saw on a previous slide, we're really aiming to use each container up to 100 cycles, especially those that are made of stainless steel and glass. So, the reality is just that if you're putting that through, 100 times, with consumers, with the supply chain, with cleaning and all of that, you really need to consider how your containers are going to be aging in the platform. And that could mean, different things based on the material of the container. But, here on the example of glass, you would have to think about scuffing or scratching. So, one of the ways that, we've seen a couple of brands tackle this is by using a resin on their glass container and essentially doing an embossing or even debossing in some cases of their logo or some message. And as you can see in this image, the more scuffs you get, the more prominent your logo or your messaging is gonna show up, right? So it's using the aging and the scratches in a purposeful way, in like a beneficial way. Kind of like, if you have like a leather jacket or, a pair of shoes that you really love, and after breaking them in, like they feel even better, right? So it's really new and really innovative of how to think about that in the packaging industry, just because it's a complete, different way of thinking about it, which is super exciting. It's kind of like thinking what is the consumer experience the first time this container is being used? What is the experience on the 10th, on the 50th, on the 100th time, and does that change at all? And does it stay the same, and why? So we're starting to ask those questions, especially for brands that are looking for custom packaging. But, if you're looking at stock packaging, stuff that's off the shelf, there's different approaches that you can take to also take advantage of, what we call aging gracefully. So, I just talked a little bit about custom packaging. So, what I'll always like to highlight as well with brand partners is that once you do get into custom packaging, which is what Häagen-Dazs did, you can also really tailor custom experiences, right? So not only on the aging of the packaging, but also thinking about the consumer experience. What's really, I think a good takeaway from this slide is, actually how Nestle developed this container. They did a huge consumer research, and they found out that most Americans eat, their pint of ice cream in one take, and a lot of times, like either sitting on a couch or in their bed. Meaning that they eat directly out of the paper packaging that they have, and one of the biggest pressure points was that the paper starts to get soggy after a while, or that it really hurts to hold that cold container in your hands, that you cannot really scoop all the ice cream out of the bottom. So those were like known pressure points to the brand, and they really used that to their advantage when designing this custom container for Loop, right? So what really started off from their filling line, Häagen-Dazs ice cream is actually flash frozen, meaning that it comes out of the machine in a liquid form and it freezes very quickly. And they attribute that process to, basically making the texture better. So that process is really paramount for Häagen-Dazs. And so basically they had to find a container that they could also still flash freeze, but we were dealing with the issue of having to ship this container, from a warehouse, through UPS to people's houses, meaning that this container would need to stay at a frozen temperature for up to 32 hours, even in the height of summer, right? So for that, Loop worked on the supply chain, and we designed, a cooler with, cooling plates to keep like the inside of that shipping container at a certain temperature. But at the same time, Häagen-Dazs really wanted to develop a container that also had some insulation directly. So as you can see here on the slide on the right, 3 pieces, right? All one material, which is also awesome for us from a cleaning perspective. It's all stainless steel. So as you can see, the middle container is what they use to flash freeze, their product in. And then they put the lid on, they know that that's a vanilla, ice cream. And then once it's ready to ship, they attach that outer piece, the one on the bottom, right? And that creates an insulation because it's creating a double wall. So it really helped them out, thinking about the issues from the consumer, but also thinking about the filling line. So that's how they developed that whole idea. And this is really great from the consumer side because, it does not make the container soggy because it's a different material. Another really interesting part of this is because of the insulation, it doesn't hurt to hold because, you're not holding directly against the ice cream. But another part is that the ice cream actually melts from top to bottom, meaning that you never get that experience of a soggy or like island of ice cream, which is the term that they used. After consuming this ice cream, after a while, you create a puddle. So this is really, a solution to that issue. So, again, just solved so many issues in one simple packaging with only 3 pieces, all one material with permanent printing. They did a really tremendous job. And, we're starting to see more and more brands going in that direction of custom packaging, right? It's just so exciting to be able to almost rebrand yourself as a brand, on the Loop platform. Like, what is my consumer experience through reusable containers, right? And since they're, as you remember from my other slide, since they're implementing, just spending more money per container, $3 versus 10 cents, there's a lot that you can do with those $3, right? So it's investing in the material, in the design, and the usability, all of that. So here are a couple of more images of other containers that have been developed. This is by Unilever, and this is actually a stock packaging, meaning that it's not a custom design. It's something that they found off the market, but used pad printing in order to, really brand themselves in this packaging and make their packaging stand out. So, we've been seeing a lot of brands going for permanent printing, such as anodizing, powder coating, screen printing, pad printing, laser etching, which are really cool ways of branding these stock packagings and, really making you stand out. Clorox is another good example of that. Here they actually have a complete minimal container. Only the lid is actually branded, and it's a sticker that they're using that is a wash-off type of label. So, whole different approach. Here is another good example of embossing, debossing. Perhaps you cannot really see that here on the container, but the images, they're actually debossed. So just a nice touch. Here you can see some of the private label containers that we have in France Life today. So these are stock packagings that are using wash-off labels. And what I mean by that, these are labels that are used every cycle. So they come off, in a cleaning cycle, which is really great because you can use that same container for many different SKUs. So again, modularity and universal packaging. So this is the current packaging. This is what they're thinking for a 2.0 version. As you can see, the bottom stays the same and it's just the top that changes. So again, thinking about universal and modular containers. This is what Pantene launched with and is live and here in the US. This is their idea for their future container made of stainless steel with reusable pumps, which is also novel. It's something that is currently in development as well, to have a pump that is reusable. This is Ren today in glass and in a pad printed container. This is their idea for their future container. And then, one more thing I wanted to take away is that think of Loop as more of an engine for innovation, less of, an e-commerce platform, etc. We're working with so many different brands and many different regions, but also in many different categories. So as you can see here on the far left, this is a stainless steel container that we have developed with Shell for motor oil, and it's all stainless steel, so many different types of categories that we're also interested in getting into. More recently, we have announced partnership with McDonald's and also Tim Hortons and Burger King in Canada and also in the US. So, we're starting to think about fast food chains and restaurants and hotels and condominiums and just like so many different ways that we can touch reusable containers and reusable systems in current businesses. So it's really interesting to see that developing, to be part of that as well from a designer and packaging perspective. So keep that in mind. Another really interesting project to highlight is the one in the center. So that's a reusable diaper bin that our team here in the US has created for Pampers, for P&G. So the idea there is that you would ship, clean diapers in this container. It would come with a liner. You would take out the clean diapers out of this container, put on the liner, and then you could put your used diapers in there. So this would be shipped back to us, and in partnership with TerraCycle, we can actually take those diapers and recycle them. And then the container obviously would get cleaned and then prepped again for shipping and getting back into the loop. And then one more thing to also mention is the work that Integral has done. That's part of Signal, also Unilever brand. Because it's so hard to have a squeezable container in a reusable format, they have been thinking about, how could they even change the format of or the formula of their product. So instead of toothpaste, they went into tooth tabs so that they can be in a static or, more durable container like in glass or even stainless steel. Right now they're looking at glass. So, thinking about different categories, different models of reusability, and even innovations within the product themselves. So those are my three takeaways: the change in ownership of a brand asset, right? The packaging, thinking about closed loop materials like stainless steel and glass, thinking about permanent printing and artwork in that sense as well. And then just keeping in mind that there's many different categories and systems that can be challenges for reuse. So that's all I had. Really happy to answer any questions. As you can see here, there's also my email if you ever wanted to reach out. You can also find me on LinkedIn more than happy to connect with you and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Jasmin. We actually do have a few questions that have come through in the chat. So I'm just going to read out the first one that we got a little bit earlier. So Michelle asks, do you think that durable packaging will negatively or positively affect sales?
Well, the work that we're doing right now is really to mimic and make it as easy as possible for the consumer to buy into reusability. So it's not more complicated than what it is today to buy single-use packaging. That's, one of our main goals. And that's why we're working with these big retailers to make that integration very feasible and easy for the consumer. So I don't, even based on our current data, it's been really, really amazing to see the feedback from consumers and the sale quantity and all that. So I definitely think it's going to be a positive feedback.
Okay, so I'll read the next one as well, just because we have a few who are really interested in asking questions. So she asked another question as well. How would consumers recycle this packaging, and how would they return it back to Haagen-Dazs for the tin?
Right. So how we're set up today in the US or in Canada is still as an e-com platform, meaning that you could go to our website, loopstore.com or loopstore.ca. You can sign up to be a part of, our consumer base. I believe it's still limited at the moment. So you would, you need to be on a list and be accepted based on your zip code, especially for Canada. I don't think that's true for US anymore. But essentially, you would go on our website, sign up. You can put things into your cart, purchase just as you would normally online. There you're going to see that you're paying for the product, and you're also paying a deposit for each container. You're going to get these containers delivered to you by UPS. Once you're done using those products, you're going to ship them back to us through the same method that you received them through UPS. And we also have a reusable shipping container. So you're not going to be receiving them in cardboard boxes. We actually also developed a reusable shipping tote. That's what we call it. It's like a fabric box that is also modular and all reusable. Actually has won a couple of awards last year on the design itself. And so you would basically trigger the return, get it back to us via UPS. We're going to check it in. You can get back your deposits, and we're going to be cleaning that and sending it back to the brand who are going to be refilling, and then we can put it back into the loop for the next user. So it's not on the consumer anymore to recycle these containers. Right, this is a brand asset. Basically, the brand owns this packaging, meaning that they're also fully responsible for the recycling of these containers, which is a huge deal, right? Because today, anything that we buy, on a Walmart, on a Target, how many of those brands are really responsible for doing their due diligence of recycling their containers and making sure that the materials that they're putting into the packaging are recyclable, municipally. So it's a really big deal that the brands are taking on that responsibility.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're getting such amazing questions about your presentation. So we're going to have to send you the rest just because we're short on time. And they'll also be posted on our medias.
Great.
Thank you so much, Jasmin.
Yeah, of course. Pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.